Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. For those of you who don't know me yet from previous town halls, my name is Matt Bourne. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Defense Communities. I want to thank all of you for being here. We're going to have a great conversation today with the Honorable Jordan Gillis, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment, as we talk about the base of the future and the impact of COVID-19. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to ADC Board President Joe Driscoll, who will be leading today's conversation. Joe, take it away.
Thank you very much, Matt, and thank you to everyone for tuning in to today's CMSI Town Hall. We appreciate the great attendance from around the country today. Just a few short months ago, when people discussed the base of the future, the most common terms used were things like 5G wireless, big data, and artificial intelligence, among others. Fast forward to today, and the conversation is now seeming to be a lot different. And our installations and communities are facing a challenge few envisioned that was brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. As we look toward the immediate future, DoD, our communities and states are grappling with a series of really tough challenges with no obvious or easy solutions. And some of those are, how will installations operate in this new environment, and how will they continue to provide quality of life services, among others? Will much needed installation resilience and construction projects be delayed or canceled? And how will DoD manage interruptions to installation supply chain and weapon system acquisition programs? And how will these interruptions affect our communities and states? And it is also just as important that we ensure the lessons learned and partnerships formed during this pandemic aren't forgotten. It's becoming clear that we need to document the hard-learned best practices, and that we somehow institutionalize the installation community partnerships that have proven to be so valuable over the past few months. Our conversation today will explore these issues and dive into the pressing question: what types of policies and partnerships need to be in place to ensure that installations and communities remain resilient and connected? And what have we learned from this pandemic? It's now my great pleasure to welcome our guest and friend, Jordan Gillis, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment. Mr. Secretary, you started your new position in March, just when this pandemic was starting to take a toll. I know that you've been one of the busiest people in the Pentagon and came in the middle of all this. And for those reasons, we're doubly appreciative that you're taking some time today to join us. I have a few questions on this topic, but might want to give you an opportunity just up front to give us a short message.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Joe, Matt, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Unfortunately, I've lost control of my calendar today and am not able to spend as much time as I'd hoped with you, but you got to believe me when I tell you I would much rather be with ADC and ADC members than the meeting I'm getting dragged off to. So I'll start with that, and I'll also say thanks to all the members for their continued partnership, their continued support across all the military communities and all the military installations. I did start in March, but looking back, it seems like it was maybe March 2005, because the last couple months have each seemed like a couple of years. But I'm still more than happy to engage and take your questions and share any insights that I've got on any of those great topics that you teed up.
Well, Mr. Secretary, again, thank you for taking the time. I know you have lots of things to do, and we appreciate you taking some of that valuable time out of your day to be with us. I do have some questions, and I know our listeners are going to be very interested in these. So let me just kind of fire off into those. So the obvious one is, what impact will COVID-19 have on the future of installations and installation support services in particular?
Sure. It's interesting. I don't think that we are at the point where we think that the impact that we see now is a new normal. We'd like to believe that whether it's in months or a year, that there will be a vaccine or other treatments that will allow us to resume something that's more close to what we resemble. So the things that we're doing now in the meantime whether that's extensive weather and safety leave, or gosh, if you're a family on post, there are a lot where the housing providers are addressing only emergency work orders and not routine work orders. And so we need to get back to a place where we can execute those kind of basic services. And where we're not there yet, we think that in the future we will be soon.
Well, I appreciate that perspective. An associated question, and I've heard from service members and families in my own state here along these lines. How has the department responded to housing maintenance issues? And obviously, we all know about housing maintenance issues that extended back before COVID-19 started, and also PCS movement challenges that have been caused by the pandemic. Obviously, those are two ongoing issues, but they've been made more difficult by the situation we're in.
They have. So on the housing maintenance side, it really runs what we've done overall is allowed installations flexibility to put in policies based on the real conditions in the local community and on the ground. And so from a housing maintenance standpoint, what you've got are places where, like I mentioned, you're really only executing emergency work orders and not the routine ones. But in some places, you're able to do a little bit more. And so they've, instituted protocols where they ask the families to disclose if anyone has experienced, this list of symptoms or has a temperature, and the maintenance tech does the same. They wear masks and they use PPE and hand sanitizer, and they're able to execute work much more close to normal. So it runs the gamut. And from a maintenance standpoint, I think that's what we're going to try to get back to across the board. And then you had a second part of your question, which I don't want to ignore, but I've already forgotten. So if you could ask me again, I'll go right there.
It's the ongoing challenges regarding PCS movements. And,
of course.
And of course, that's not only just simply travel from place to place, but also, as I gather, there have been issues about the issuance of a new contract for moving household goods around the country and around the world. So I'm sure that situation has made it even more difficult.
No, absolutely. So the new contract, the new approach, is designed to be in place for the next PCS season. So that is, I think it was envisioned to be awarded. Maybe it's under protest. I can't remember if the protest has been resolved, but that is going to apply to the next PCS season. For the season that we should be in right now, we were still using the former approach that we've used for the last couple of years. And what the impact of COVID has been on that is everybody in the military knows you've got a peak move season that typically occurs during the summer. And we do that on purpose. We want to accommodate folks who have families in school, and really it feeds to our own school schedule, where we've got folks, PCSing to Fort Leavenworth or Carlisle Barracks to start courses. So our peak season, where it's usually concentrated in a couple months, that's actually shifted. So it usually starts in May, but we weren't able to execute it because of the stop movement order in place across the department. And so the longer that we are not PCSing people, the more drawn out that peak season will be. And the services are all managing that and making whatever accommodations they can make to either move people later, maybe not move people that they would have otherwise moved, but they have to work within the constraints of the number of moves that industry can support. And we want to guard against maybe doing more than industry could support just because we have a demand for it, because there's a danger that you get into carriers who might be doing the moves that don't meet our quality standards. And so the services have to manage between their desire to move a bunch of people and industry's ability to provide quality moves. And so they're keeping an eye on that and standing by for stop movement to be lifted to begin PCS. But we plan to see a lot of moves in a concentrated period, just like we always do. But that'll occur later than it normally starts.
I'd like to explore this PCS movement issue just a little bit more. Most of us who are working with a base or have bases in our state know that the health protection condition Charlie has been in effect at many of our bases around the country. Is it a service-wide or is it a DoD-wide policy with regard to what that condition is at this point? Is that a service determination or a local determination? How is that done?
Well, so the health protection conditions are defined by DoD, so those are common definitions. But which one is in place at an installation is a local decision, and that'd be based on conditions on the ground. So we don't centrally dictate that. We leave that up to local commanders' discretion.
Okay. Let me move on to an issue that I know a lot of our communities have been very concerned about from an economic point of view. Obviously, you have to worry about these things from a mission point of view. What's been the impact of the pandemic on the organic industrial base and the installation supply chain? Obviously, those entities also exist in communities and states. We serve the military, but where are we on those at this point, and how has DoD responded, and where are we headed for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so OIB is kind of interesting. We look at it, we pay attention to the defense industrial base, kind of the usual suspect contractors that you could imagine. So we're very closely linked in with the Lockheeds and Raytheons and Boeings, et cetera, to understand the impact of COVID on them. But the organic industrial base that we are directly responsible for is kind of unique. So our first concern across the OIB was for the safety and welfare of the workforce. And so just like any other installation where it was appropriate to let folks take permissive weather and safety leave, we allowed them to do that. And there are places where that had a big impact. So, this isn't secret, so I'll name a few. Marine Corps Logistics Base Albany, that was in a localized hotspot. And so they actually closed the depot for a couple of weeks to keep folks safe. And so then that has an impact on the intake of work and on the production output that they have. And so each service who's responsible for OIB facilities is working now, actually, and they owe these reports to me so I can take a consolidated view. They're working to quantify the exact impacts and chart out some plans going forward. But Albany was kind of an extreme case where they shut down. Some places the staffing went down, but not much lower than 90%, and so they were able to keep production pretty much to production to promise is what they measure, and they got pretty close to where their target was pre-COVID. So it really, the impact across runs the gamut. I think in Navy shipyards, you've got the Navy who is recalling some reservists to actually help manage some of the shipyard work. You've got other places where there will be an increase in overtime to increase throughput. And you've got some places where there'll just be some carryover of work into next year. So it's really been different impacts across, the 22 covered depots and then all of the other, sort of ammunition plants and other depot type facilities that we have.
Very good. Let me ask you then a related question. Has the pandemic impacted MILCON projects and schedules around the country? I was at a groundbreaking for a new hospital at an Army installation in my state just a few days ago, but I know some other projects have seen some fairly substantial changes in their schedule. What does that look like throughout the system?
Yeah, we as long as things are still able to be awarded in the year that award was anticipated, I am not too worried that they're going to get too far behind schedule. And so across the board, I think that they are all still within that window, at least because of COVID. Now, there could be other reasons that have caused other projects to slip, but I think COVID-related delays, we haven't seen anything that would cause me concern yet. But we, Corps of Engineers, NAVFAC, all the services are working hard to keep those on track and get them awarded and get things built. So awards have slowed some. I think probably a bigger impact has been where construction was underway and the workforce, thinned out for safety reasons. But I think by now, most of the underway projects figured out a way to continue the work, whether that was staggering shifts or having folks work further apart in different parts of the project. They've been able to keep engaged and get back closer to schedule.
Yeah, that's good news. I know we're running very close on time, so let me ask you one last question here, and I know you have to go to another meeting that I suspect is probably not as pleasant as talking to this audience. But so I made reference earlier to lessons learned from this pandemic. And obviously our communities have been impacted, the installations have been impacted, Department of Defense and all of the services have been impacted greatly, and we're still in the middle of that. But I also made reference to the fact that we need to capture the lessons learned. Here in my own state, I'm part of a fusion cell that's put together to make sure that we do things differently in the future. What are your general thoughts and general comments going forward about how your office, the department, and the services can work with communities and states to make sure we capture what we've learned from this, both good and bad, and maybe put some of this in place for the future? I know it's not over yet, of course, but how do we do that for future learning?
Well, my first question is, did you talk to my boss? Because she asked us that exact same question and is very insistent that we document our lessons learned so that, whether it's a medical pandemic or another kind of natural disaster, that we have got a playbook that we can pull out and not have to relearn everything that we learned this time around. And so across, the acquisition and sustainment community here at the Department of Defense, we've been charged to do just that. And so we have just started working with the services to try to figure out the best mechanism to collect all those lessons and then synthesize and refine them so that we can create a coherent document so that the next time this happens, we can move out pretty smartly.
Well, Mr. Secretary, on behalf of the Association of Defense Communities, and I know our members around the country, we're certainly looking forward to participating, particularly at the installation level, in making sure that we share some of those observations, particularly as they intersect with the needs of supporting the mission and resilience on the installation. So we look forward to that. Good luck to you. Best wishes. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know we've gotten to the end of our time. I know that there are some questions out there, but we'll take those questions, answer as many as we can. And Mr. Secretary, if you don't mind, we may forward some of them to you and your team if we can't answer them. But we really appreciate you coming on today as a part of this CMSI series. And best wishes to you. And Matt, now I'll turn things back over in your direction for a wrap up.
Thank you guys very much. And again, apologies for having to cut it short, but I look forward to your questions, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Matt, turn things back over to you for some wrap up here.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And you're absolutely right. I think we can certainly help DoD and the services in collecting those best practices. I'm sure our audience right now has many they'd like to document as well. So we will work with the services and DoD to make sure that communities and what we've learned is incorporated into whatever they document moving forward. So I want to thank everyone today. I want to echo Joe's comments and thank Secretary Gillis for his time. I hope the audience found his remarks helpful and insightful. I want to remind everyone attending to please check your email following this town hall. You'll be receiving a follow-up email with information regarding this discussion, including a post-webinar survey. Please take a moment to take that survey, and your input is absolutely necessary to ensure that we are continuing to do the best possible job at giving you the information you need during this pandemic. Be sure to join us next Thursday, July 16th, for our town hall that will explore how creativity and art is being used by service members and military families as an outlet for stress and anxiety. In the meantime, be sure to check out our website. Thanks again for joining us today. If folks have questions, I'm always available, and we look forward to welcoming you to a future town hall. Take care, everyone.